Routines, habits, diets, workouts, it's all there. We all want to get a new routine, but there's one little friend of ours that's giving us a hard time, and that's emotion. So today's episode is the three types of personality types who resist routine, the three types of people who resist routine, and what we can do to actually work on it. Let's get that very clear. The very first thing I want to say, it's not that these people lack discipline. It's not a matter of a lack of discipline as much as it is as a high level of emotion. In other words, they're all emotional. They're very emotional people. So it's not that they lack the discipline. It's that when you have that much emotion, discipline is hard to have. That's what's really to be understood. And people are all about their feelings in that respect. So there are three types of people. I need you to understand that, when we have routine is part of our life. It's part of the work that we have to do in our lives. That is crucial. And sometimes these routines, they don't match what the person actually needs on an emotional level. So it's not that the routine was bad. You can have the best diet. You can wind up checking the diet or checking the workout plan or checking these things, but it's not because of that. It's not because the routine was horrible. It's because of their emotions and the management of that. They are having to not let go of their emotions, but detach a little bit and come on the surface and become a little bit more grounded in that area. That's what it's about. So the very first personality type, and it could be used, and make sure you listen along and maybe even play this again because you're going to want to pick it up later. The very first one is the comfort-driven type. So this person will struggle with routine when it feels cold, unemotional. Somehow they don't connect to it on an emotional level in some way, and it doesn't feel emotionally right with them. That's literally that right there. Because they make decisions and move according to their feelings. You see? So it's not about choosing the right routine. It's about integrating that routine into their emotions. That's basically what that is. And I want you to understand that. So they're not resistant to the routine, the habit, or the diet, or the workout plan, but there's this emotional setting inside of themselves. There's an emotional piece inside of themselves, inside everything. And if the routine doesn't feel that it can integrate into their life in a certain way, then what happens? They reject it. They automatically denied, mentally vetoed, no. They throw in a big no. What they need to understand is that your emotions have to go into the actual workout. Learning to be in your body is part of being in those emotions. Okay, sweating is uncomfortable, right? Being able to sit in that and understand that doesn't feel comfortable to these people. So they try to follow routines that don't include comfort. It's like, okay, how are you going to do a workout if it doesn't include comfort, right? It doesn't include emotional connection or some emotional grounding involved. So it feels unsustainable to them. They can't continue it. They can't keep on going. They can't do it. So I think it's important for us to know that the way we need to work with this particular comfort-driven type is you need to build some emotional warmth into your repetition. Okay? Have a workout afterwards. Have a nice smoothie, something that's maybe comforting, but not unhealthy, but comforting. You got to find that happy area here, right? So we build that emotional warmth into our routine, into our repetition. So for example, working out for some people don't need music to work out, but it can be comforting to the person that likes music. It brings up emotion, and emotions can be powerful when they're channeled. Okay, so when you take music and you start to include that into a workout, right? Or for example, you start changing your environment where you live to have a familiar setup so you can actually work out better. But that area is now more comfortable as to how you do that workout. So you're attaching your habits to the cues of your comfort. But here's the deal. You don't want to let comfort win. We need to have routine. That routine needs to be there. We have to integrate the emotions into the routine, not the routine into the emotion. Okay? Just understand that. And it's also important for these people to add human connection. So yes, working out with a friend, working out with another person, making it maybe more social, going to the gym. For some people, they don't like that. It's uncomfortable to be seen. That could be the people that are actually more living in their mind instead of their emotions, is that they're like, how do I look? Is everybody looking at me? Are they thinking about me? That's more of the mental aspect, right? The mental part of it. So what we need to do is have that human connection. Very important. Like actually having a friend that you could reach out and say, you know what, I feel really good. I really just worked out today, and be able to share that. But you have to be able to share that with a trustworthy friend, someone who has your best interest in mind, who can support you in the process. Very important. So you add that human connection where it's possible. All right. Now, another thing also, instead of these giant harsh starts, like these are people that, with the comfort driven type, I tell them, say, go home and I want you to do 75 sit-ups tomorrow. Oh no, the emotional switch gets flipped immediately. Totally flipped immediately. Oh, and then the next day it's a complete utter failure. Like they backslide harshly, right? So what do you got to do? We have to remember that human behavior doesn't have to be massive. For these people, they need to enter it into a workout very gently in the beginning. That's how you're going to be able to do it. So you're not forcing discipline. You're actually making the entryway or pathway into the routine a little safe, smaller, easier, and most of all, familiar and practical at the end of the day. So instead of giving them the 75 sit-up harsh starts like that, we're going to really give them an entryway. If they're going into a habit for the first time, you have to understand these people will throw up emotional walls. They may not even show up. They'll stop contacting their personal trainer. They'll stop that diet. They will immediately reverse engines because it's all about their emotions with these people. So you got to have some soft entries happening, being able to step into these workouts, right? Now, for these people, if you're a fitness guru, a fitness influencer, you might have that Nike just do it mentality. Oh, no, you have to do the 75. You have to do it, and you might push these people. You have to, but you're not realizing psychologically their level of emotion. You're looking at it for what you could do. You're looking at it from the schema or mental recipe of what you would do. I don't care what you could do. You're capable of jumping an entire staircase. You're the exception, not the rule. Not everyone can do it that way. I want to be so clear. If you understand human emotion, you'll understand this. I'm not saying we have to go soft on these people, but I am saying that when they enter into their workouts, it's going to be a gentle practice first to build continuity and momentum. And you might say, oh, well, what is 5 push-ups going to do? I've had a conversation with a bodybuilder. He's like, oh, what is 5 sit-ups? 5 sit-ups not going to do anything. 5 push-ups. To you, it's not going to do anything. To the person that is all about their emotions, it's everything. Because what they're trying to do is build continuity. They're trying to build routine. They're trying to build repetition. And their emotions are in the way. Can you see that? I need those people to see and understand that. Eventually, when they start to enter into this, it'll become what we call behavior activation. It'll wind up becoming automatic. But we have to be able to look at it in that respect. That is where it's important. That is where it's crucial. So having those little pathways that are gentle in the beginning, those 5 push-ups a day in order to build continuity, and we up the ante the following week, and we start working with what's manageable, go from there. Because contrary to popular belief, there are people out there that will say, oh, but he should be doing 75 sit-ups, 75. How do you know he doesn't have depression? How do you know he doesn't have anxiety, right? How do you know? How do you know those things aren't getting in the way in the process, right? So I just want to make that very clear, that the comfort-driven type needs the hard workout, and I want to be clear that I'm not going soft on that, but we need to enter it into the whole routine in a way where it's integrated into their feelings. It's got to be safe, familiar, and repeatable for them. You're going to find what you like. Like, there's a million ways to exercise. Like, for one person, it's swinging a tennis racket, and another person is swinging a stick in martial arts. It's completely different. The motions are quite similar, but it's different. So the next one is the autonomy-driven type. The second one, autonomy-driven. This person will resist routine when it's imposed, when it's forced, when someone says you have to do this. By the way, if you have this person, good luck. It's going to be hard. But when you try to force it on them, when you try to control it on them, when you dictate that it has to be done, it must be done this way, and it must only be done this way, they're not going to reject the routine there, okay? They're going to get disappointed and a little annoyed that their free will and agency and choice suddenly went out the window. They're going to feel like they don't have a choice. They're going to feel like they have to do it your way. And that is not going to gain any entry point. Like, you're not going to get anywhere trying to force a system on somebody. That's what people will do. They'll either force the system or they'll force the mindset, and that mindset doesn't jive with this personality type. It doesn't fall into play. It doesn't work. So they reject the very loss of their freedom, of their agency. They reject that. So if the routine doesn't feel like they had some creativity in the workout, they'll completely, utterly disengage. Even if they technically follow it for a short period, they will disengage because they want to add their own thing into it to make it their own. They want to take the recipe but integrate it into what they feel and their feelings and what they do. So we have to be able to take these people and turn that routine into actual ownership for them, that they take ownership of the routine. And here's how you're going to do it. You're going to mix it up. You're going to mix and match. You're going to play around with this a little bit, right? So let them design their own workout instead of just handing them one and say, fuck you, this is what you have to do. Give them flexible time in their schedule instead of a rigid schedule. Add them to adjust at will. You could say that. Adjust at your will. Make adjustments. Make sure it's on Monday, but adjust it for that day. And go from there. Give them a little bit of room. So this is a very simple point of view. It's powerful, though, because you go from, I have to do this, to this is my recipe now. This is my system. This is what I'm going to do. So what happens is you actually build a better relationship with ownership. And then all of the consistency goes. Boom! Total transformation for this person. So that's that. The third personality type that resists routine is the meaning type. The meaning and flow kind of person. So this person will struggle, especially with their emotions, when the routine feels totally mechanical, when it feels totally repetitive, and it doesn't have any meaning behind it. And that meaning connects to their emotions, by the way. So they don't necessarily resist the effort that's going down. That's not the case at all. They resist the repetition, not because they don't like the repetition, because they don't understand the purpose. There has to be a purpose behind things. So I coach people, and I coach a person in breath work. And I needed to explain the actual purpose and meaning behind why we do it, why breath work is actually done. And it is amazing that it supports the prefrontal cortex. It helps human beings deal with their own impulses. So purpose is crucial. Without any meaning, without any purpose, that repetition is like, they feel like, oh, I got to wake up and do this. So they resist the repetition. Like, they resist it. They don't have a purpose as to why. They don't have a why that's strong enough. They need a purpose to understand it. The reason why you're going to work this weight out this way is because it's going to work this, having a sense of purpose with that. So the major problem with this is without any meaning, without any purpose, the repetition just becomes absolutely emotionally draining of their time, and they disengage completely. They disconnect. They completely switch their attention span off. They're turned off. So what do we do? How do we actually work on that? Well, we keep the actual routine. We keep the routine. We keep it going, but we have to refresh that experience that's inside of it. So we break up the routine. You add variety, and you add fun. You add music in there too. You add excitement. You add things into it. So you add variety to it. So if they have a diet and it's typically like only eat this on Fridays, only eat this on Wednesdays, that will send them in another direction. But when you give them a variety, say, hey, here, these are 9 different foods you can have on Friday that are falling in line with carbohydrates, that sort of thing. So that's what we want to do. So refresh the experience inside the routine constantly. Very important. When we have a habit of some sort, we need to tie that habit into the identity of the person and tie that purpose into what they're doing. So it goes from I'm actually building this to this is who I'm becoming, and I need variety in that. So guess what? When you look at the methods of how they do things, you can change the method. Constantly, you could change them, but the outcomes could be the same. It could be absolutely the same. So like in martial arts, there may be like a back fist, right? There's a back fist. So we're going to train the back fist. Okay, are we going to do the back fist 7,000 times the same way? What? No, you do. You add variety inside the consistency. So what we're going to do, we're going to do back fist to the focus mitt, back fist to the heavy bag, back fist in our forms. It's all there. You're actually going to have variety inside that consistency. You're going to break up the monotonous repetition and have more variation that they can put their intention into instead of just completely dropping the entire idea, letting go completely of the whole entire repetition. They don't need less routine. They need a live routine. They need routines that are actually going to support them. They need variety baked into their process. So that's what I want to share with you. So here's the deal, okay? Routines break down for 3 reasons. It either is emotionally cold instead of somehow connecting to their comfort zone. Getting in that comfort zone is not coming out of it, it's coming to the edge. If it feels imposed on people instead of them taking some actual ownership, or if it feels completely meaningless and without any purpose whatsoever. So you work on those 3, and routine, habit, diet, workout, there's no longer a fight with that. There's no longer a fight. No longer a fight. So this episode is literally the hidden secret behind development, the hidden secret behind diet, the hidden secret behind working out. It's the hidden secret behind routine. So you got to figure out which one of these are you. If you're both, you can take 2 and work them. And you'll be amazed at what you accomplish, because all you're going to do is start working with your routines in a different way, in a way that you never thought was possible. And that's all I'm going to say. Have a great day. See you on the next episode. Don't forget to click the Patreon link below.